Tonda McCharles, Toronto Star, right here, Prime Minister, right here.
Where are you? Oh, there you are. Sorry.
Hi.
In plain sight. Sorry.
We're so many reporters here, so it'll be one question. We won't take follow-ups, but please bear with us. Prime Minister, this announcement I'd like you to characterize it in terms of how big an entry into the market you expect it really is, and how do you intend to explain it to the U.S. In allowing that entry, and separately, how do you intend to explain it to Canadian car makers who fear any softening on Chinese EVs?
Okay, so you mean the auto portion of the broader partner? Yes, okay. So I think the first thing to say is exactly that it's part of a broader partnership, and the fundamental issue is we have a broader strategic partnership on which to build and create big opportunity. But to get to the auto question and your various questions around specifically, let's put this in context. 49,000 vehicles, which is the cap on Chinese electric vehicle exports to Canada, that's part of this agreement. That's a return to levels last seen in 2023, the last full year before the Canadian tariff actions. That's the first point. Second point, again, to put it in, dimension it, that's less than 3% of the size of the Canadian auto market. The third point, to put in context, and I reference this, is that part of this agreement, and it takes a few years to build this, a couple of years to build this, that a portion, an increasing portion of those exports will be in a new segment of the Canadian market. In other words, electric vehicles that cost less than $35,000 at the landed price. So there's huge opportunity here to get more affordable cars in the electric vehicle market for Canada. The fourth element, and in many respects the most important element, is the beginning of discussions and expectation of Chinese investment in Canada and partnership in Canada to produce vehicles over time, so to partner with Canadian firms. And putting all this, and if I can take the last part of your question, then move to colleagues, which is vis-a-vis the U.S., I think we need to look at this in the context of building. I mean, we're building a new part of our car industry, building cars of the future in partnership, bringing affordable autos for Canadians at a time when affordability is top of mind, and doing it at a scale that allows for a smooth transition in the sector. Thanks.
Next question, Steve.
Steve Chase, Globe and Mail. Good afternoon. This week, two Liberal MPs cut short their visit to Taiwan. It was a friendship and outreach visit. They cut it short before they were going to meet with President William Lai. They said in a statement that they were advised to do this by the government. So why did the government advise these two Liberal MPs to cut short their visit? And is this an indication we're willing to tailor our foreign policy to placate Beijing?
Well, a couple of things. One is our policy with respect to Taiwan, our One China policy, which was set in 1970, has not changed. We're reaffirming our One China policy. It remains constant. It's consistent. We have relations with the government here, People's Republic of China, and we have people-to-people relations in Taiwan. Those MPs, members of my caucus and members of our caucus, participated in the people-to-people proportion of that trip, but no, not in the government proportion, and that's straightforward, not causing confusion about what the policy is of the government, the policy of Canada that has been the policy of Liberal governments and the policy of Conservative governments over the course of the last 55 years.
Prochaine question, Laurence.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Carney, Laurence Radio-Canada.
Yes, hello, Mr. Prime Minister. In terms of the Indo-Pacific strategy, I believe in that strategy, you describe China as more of a disruptive, an increasingly disruptive power. Has that changed? Do you believe that China is a disruptive power? Well, there are disruptive hyperpowers, superpowers that exist right around the world. And that's the world as it is now. That's the truth. That is the new reality. And I think that for Canada, having relationships with major powers and trading relationships as well, but relationships that are calibrated based on our values and our interests are important. But is China a disruptive power? That is not my goal. I was not a member of the government. So you don't agree with that? You changed your opinion? Well, I wasn't there at the time. That was not my opinion.
Minister, less than a year ago, you said that China was the biggest security threat to Canada. Do you still believe that?
The security landscape continues to change, and in a world that's more dangerous and divided, we face many threats. That's the reality, and the job, my responsibilities as Prime Minister, the job of the government, is to manage those threats. You manage those threats by building resilience, building security. You manage those threats through alliances. You manage those threats through engagement. And we're pursuing all of those. And I would say that, well, the threat environment has increased. The risks have multiplied. So too has our resilience and our engagement, which is protecting Canadians on balance.
But does that threat from
Next
China still
question.
exist?
I'll refer to my previous answer.
Next question, Martina.
Prime Minister Martina Stavis, New York Times. After your visit, is it fair to say that you're concluding that China is a more predictable and maybe reliable partner to Canada than the United States is today?
Well, let me answer it. I'm going to answer it directly with respect to the relations with China and our engagement with China. And I will say that from the first conversation I had with Premier Lee, telephone conversation, then the meeting in New York, the long meeting with President Xi in Korea, and then the meetings over the course of the last few days. There are a number of specific issues, and I've outlined them that where we've made progress in our strategic partnership. But we spent a fair bit of time in all of those meetings about the guardrails, if you will, of the relationship, where we felt we could cooperate, where we had differences of opinion, where we had differences of view in the system, respecting each other's differences in the system. And that sort of candid and consistent dialogue, frank dialogue, that leads to a more predictable and effective relationship. Our relationship, the one comparison I will give you with the United States, our relationship, this is no insight, is much more multifaceted, much deeper, much broader than it is with China. But yes, in terms of the way that our relationship has progressed in recent months with China, it is more predictable, and you see results coming from that.
Next
Thank you.
question.
Juste la fin sur la prévisibilité, juste la toute
Yeah,
fin.
On the
prévisibilité,
predictability,
oui,
please,
c'est,
in French. Yes.
C'est nécessaire de faire une petite explication.
Well, I think an explanation is necessary here.
Des enjeux clairs pour la
There
coopération
are
entre le Canada et la
clear
Chine.
issues in place in terms of Canada-China
mais ils sont
cooperation.
aussi
There
clairs.
are challenges, but at the
Et
same
alors,
time,
par conséquent,
those are
oui,
clear
les
challenges.
relations avec la
And
Chine
therefore,
sont
the
plus
relationship
prévisibles
with China
maintenant,
is more predictable now
que d'autres relations
than
pour le
other
Canada.
relationships that Canada has
Next
around the
question,
world.
prochaine question, Mylène.
Bonjour, Monsieur Carney.
Hello, Mr. Carney.
Crête de la presse.
Milan
Je voulais savoir
Crête.
qu'est-ce que vous allez
I'd like
répondre
to
à
know
Doug Ford
what
qui
you
voulait
say to
une
Doug
usine
Ford,
en
who
échange de l'ouverture
wanted
du marché canadien de véhicules électriques chinois. Et pourquoi
a
est-ce que les
plant
tarifs
to
sur le porc
produce
sont demeurés
EVs
les
here.
mêmes?
And what about, sorry, what was the last
Le
part?
porc.
What about tariffs on pork? Well, I believe
Je vais fournir une réponse de la deuxième partie.
I'll
après,
provide you with an answer to the second part of your question later. But what is clear now is that we have made a great deal of progress when it comes to agriculture.
Et on a fait beaucoup de progrès.
We've made a lot of progress.
Nous attendons
And
que
we are expecting
il y ait plus de réduction des
that there will be
tarifs
additional
pendant
tariffs
l'année.
lowered in the
Voilà.
course of this year. That's the
En ce qui
first point.
concerne,
Second point,
Monsieur le Premier ministre,
when it comes
Ford,
to Premier Ford,
nous deux, nous voulons
both of us
bâtir une nouvelle industrie
want
automobile.
to build a new Canadian
Alors, c'est quoi
auto
l'avenir
industry.
de l'industrie
So what
automobile?
is the future of the
C'est
Canadian
des
auto
véhicules
industry?
électriques
Well, it's electric vehicles
des véhicules avec beaucoup de technologie.
and vehicles that are based on
l'abordabilité.
high technology
Les trois
as well as affordability. Three
Il y a
things.
plusieurs entreprises
There are a number
qui,
of companies
qui peuvent fournir, qui peuvent créer ces véhicules.
that can produce those vehicles here in Canada, including Chinese companies. So, in exchange for a small part of the Canadian
on a
market,
un engagement.
we now
Nous attendons
are expecting
d'investissement au Canada
that there will be investment made in Canada by the real leaders of that industry from China. So this is an agreement that will create a future for our Canadian auto sector.
Oui, ça c'est le plan.
Yes, that's the plan.
Absolument.
Annie?
Hello, Prime Minister Carney. CSIS has called China an enduring threat to Canadian tech and democracy, and some in the auto sector have said that Chinese EVs could pose a national security risk if allowed into Canada. And your plan is to increase the number of those EVs that are coming into Canada every year. Did you get any assurances from President Xi that China would stay out of elections, for example, and sensitive sectors before allowing more Chinese investment in many sectors, including the auto sector?
So several aspects. Thank you for the question. Several aspects of what you said. The first is, and I'm going to refer to something I said a few minutes ago, which is we're returning to the levels of Chinese automobiles as a cap that we had 2 years ago. Okay. Secondly, just to reinforce, that's less than 3% of the Canadian auto sector. So again, let's keep it in perspective.
But that's going up by 6.5% every year after.
Yeah. But you bring that, you compound that growth, and you're getting to about 70,000 vehicles at year 5, although the agreement has it reviewed after year 3. So again, it's still in low single-digit proportion of the size of the Canadian auto sector. Canadians buy about 1.8 million autos a year, just to put it in context. The second thing, but you asked, you had autos mentioned, but then you asked, if I may, a deeper question around our relations, and as you said, foreign interference, transnational aspects. First thing I'd say is that part of the agreement includes a security aspect, greater cooperation between law enforcement on a series of cross-border crime issues. That's the kind of progress we need in order to address a range of issues, including illicit narcotics, but as well as interference. And then the second is that we have an understanding. These are some of the issues that we discuss in terms of our expectations in Canada, our red lines in terms of preventing foreign interference, not tolerating foreign interference, and addressing it when we see it. And as Prime Minister, I've always taken this extremely seriously, just from the point when I got my security clearance well before I was elected leader of the Liberal Party. Thank you.
Next question, Christopher.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Christopher Nardi from the National Post. Canola tariffs are not completely disappearing, and more importantly, they're not disappearing on all products either. What do you say to the industry who is hoping, obviously, for progress on this, but will still be dealing with tariffs going forward in their second biggest export market?
This is enormous progress. The first thing is this is enormous progress. We're dropping the expectation starting from March 1st, so in advance of planting, we're seeing canola tariffs. We fully expect canola tariffs to drop from 85% to a combined 15%, approximately 15%. I'll use the exact language in the agreement, but we have a high degree of confidence that that's going to happen, and that's going to create an opportunity combined between meal and seed, a $7 billion market opportunity. That's the first point. The second is that the spirit of this agreement. So there's agreements and technical aspects of the agreement and expecting those to be followed. That's important. But it's also the spirit of what is a new partnership, a new era, turning the corner, historic agreement, building more broadly. That creates a series of expectations about where we're going from here, whether it's in canola, other grains, pulses, lobster, beef, pork, pet food, all these covered. So there's movement, and there's a real, it's a return, and actually more than a return, to Canada as an important agriculture partner with China.
Next question, Brian.
Prime Minister Brian Platt with Bloomberg News. Yesterday, when you met with Premier Lee, one of the things you said in the public remarks was this partnership with Canada and China, this new partnership, sets us up well for the new world order. What did you mean by that? What is the new world order?
Well, it's a great question, Brian, because I think the world is still determining what that order is going to be. And let's be clear what we're talking about first and foremost, which is what are the trading, what is going to govern global trade? What is the role of the WTO going to be? How important are bilateral deals such as the one we're developing, plurilateral deals, if I can use that term, Trans-Pacific Partnership, the potential linkages between Trans-Pacific Partnership and the EU? Where is financial regulation, payment system regulation going to fit into that? All of these aspects, I mean, use fancy word, like the architecture, the multilateral system that has been developing these is being eroded, to use a polite term, undercut, use another term. So the question is, what gets built in that place? How much of a patchwork is it? How much is it just on a bilateral basis? Or where do like-minded countries in certain areas, so like-minded countries, just to be clear, doesn't mean you agree on everything. Aspects, for example, on digital trade or agricultural trade, climate finance as another area, to move into areas of geostrategy, geosecurity. You will have different coalitions that are formed. So what this partnership does is in areas, for example, of clean energy, conventional energy, agriculture, as we were just talking about, and financial services, which we've talked less about, but the evolution of the global financial system, the role of the renminbi over time, the evolution of cross-border payments. I know it all sounds very dry, except for your organization, which I think takes an interest in it. These are important elements of how the system's going to work. And look, the expectation is that rather than these being developed necessarily through the IMF, WTO, and other multilateral organizations, it is going to be coalitions that develop them, not for the world, but for subsectors of the world. Okay.
Next question, Tom.
Hi, Prime Minister. Tom Perry with CBC. I know that you're talking about China offering stability. There are still, of course, though, concerns in this country about human rights,
yes,
about freedom of expression. I'm wondering where those fit into your calculations. Are these things that Canada just can't afford to think about because we've got to diversify our markets?
No, we fundamentally stand up for human rights. We stand up for democracy, territorial integrity, rights to self-determination. We take the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. That means the following. We do engage with countries. We calibrate that engagement depending on our values and our interests. So that engagement is more narrow when there are those issues. We also have, if you will, a sort of value-based realism to the approach. In other words, we will engage on those issues. We'll engage with coalitions on those issues because that has more influence. And we will form coalitions with those countries with which we share those broader values. I will give you a current example of the last point, which is we are a member, as you know, of the Coalition of the Willing to back Ukraine. And that is an example. Those countries in that coalition, over 30 countries, share values on a broad range, including all of those that I just mentioned. With other countries, our engagement is more narrow, it's more specific, and we keep within those guardrails. And for those relationships, we're very clear about where we will cooperate, where we differ. We'll have those engagements, but in a way that looks to make progress.
Could I just ask you a follow-up, sir? Like in your meetings over the last couple of days, did any of these issues come up?
Yes. Yes.
Could you be a little more
that was your follow-up.
I guess so. How did you discuss that in your?
We're going to move on to the next question.
How did you
here.
discuss that in your questions?
We're going to move to the next question right after. En français, oui.
En français, Oui,
on human rights with the president. Yes, we did discuss human rights.
Maria?
Thanks. Maria Chang from Reuters. Just for a follow-up, can you tell us specifically how you raised these concerns about human rights? Did you address the issue of things like Jimmy Lai, concerns about Taiwan, violations of human rights in China in your discussions with President Xi?
Well, a couple of things. One is with respect to Mr. Lai, Canada led a G7 statement in the course of recent weeks calling for his humanitarian release, a foreign minister's statement. These issues were raised in our broader discussions over the past few days. With respect to One China and Taiwan and expectations, our long-standing policy. I think I answered this earlier, but just to be clear that we had a clear exchange in terms of what our policy is and a reaffirmation of, as I say, our long-standing policy. We have different systems. Let's take a step back. We have different systems, Canada and China. That has several consequences, one of which is the breadth of our engagement with China. We respect the differences in each other's systems. It does mean that our cooperation is more focused and more limited, but to have the effective relationship, we have the direct conversations. We don't grab a megaphone and have the conversations that way.
And we'll have time for one last question, Kyle. Or David.
Thanks,
Sorry,
Gail.
David.
David Aiken, Global News. Good afternoon,
was
Prime Minister.
lucky.
I got shoved to the front here. I'd like to know what Canada is doing to protect the integrity of Greenland. And related, China fashions itself a near-Arctic power and with some claims to Arctic resources. So I wonder if you could answer that question, what we're doing to help protect Greenland's integrity, and how do you feel about China's claims, such as they are, to Arctic resources?
Well, several aspects of that. The first, with respect to Greenland, the future of Greenland is a decision for Greenland and for the Kingdom of Denmark. We are NATO partners with Denmark, and so our full partnership stands. Our obligations on Article 5, Article 2 of NATO stand, and we stand full square behind those. Thirdly, with respect to our relations with Greenland, as you know, we've opened our consulate. As you may know, the Governor General is visiting with the Minister of Foreign Affairs. There she is. No rest for you. Going to Nuuk in the first week of February. We'll be there. We're in discussions with our NATO partners and with Denmark about Arctic security through various fora, through bilaterally with Greenland and very much with Denmark, through the Nordic countries, Nordic Baltic 8, and as you know, just remind others that we've taken decisive steps in terms of Arctic security over the course of this year. One of the first things that I did as Prime Minister was to move our Arctic presence from 4 months a year to 365 days a year on land, sea, and in air, and we will continue to reinforce that. I will say that I had discussions with President Xi about the situation in Greenland, about our sovereignty in the Arctic, about the sovereignty of the people of Greenland and the people of Denmark, and I found much alignment of views in that regard. En ce qui concerne le Groenland,
With respect to Greenland,
en ce qui concerne le président Xi ou
you mean in terms of President Xi or
la position canadienne en ce qui concerne
the Canadian position on Greenland is that the future of Greenland is a decision for Greenland and Denmark. That's the first point. Second, we are allies. We are allies within NATO, and Canada is firm, has been very clear on this. We have commitments and obligations as partners in the NATO alliance, commitments to both Greenland and Denmark, and we will abide by those commitments. And we expect the other members of NATO to also abide by their commitments. I think that's enough.
C'était la même. Non, c'est une courte transaction. We respect our obligations and our responsibilities in NATO, and we expect all NATO partners to do the same.
Thank you. This puts an end to our press conference. C'est ce qui m'a fait à notre conférence de presse. Merci.
Bon, merci beaucoup.